Alrighty, welcome everybody to this episode of Move Forward with Cameron County. And tonight we have a special guest. Her name is Elizabeth Garza. She's running for Cameron County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 2, Place 2. Elizabeth, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mr. Salinas and everybody that's going to tune in. Appreciate you having me here.
It's great to have you, Elizabeth. I'd like to get to know a little bit more about yourself, if you could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you've done, and why you decided to run.
Short version. I hope I can keep it short.
It's all
Um,
right. You got plenty of time.
I was born in Houston, Texas. We relocated to Brownsville when I was in third grade. Graduated from Rivera High School. Graduated from UTB. And after that, I went back to Fort Bend County, where I was a high school teacher at George Bush High School. I taught U.S. history and government. Um, did that for 1 year, and then I went to go work for a publishing company, Glencoe McGraw-Hill, which publishes textbooks, student textbooks. And then I went to law school. Decided I truly thought I always wanted to be an attorney, and so
Wow.
finally went to law school. Did that, and then in 2012, I had my first child, and I knew that I needed to come home, and so I've been back ever since. I have two beautiful daughters now. One is 12, and the other one is 8. So I've been a practicing attorney now, going in May. Will be 14 years this May. I practice in family law, so I do cases, child protective services cases. I do divorces, custodies, child support, adoption. Um, I do personal injury cases, criminal defense, and I also practice in federal court. Before I moved here, when I was in Houston, I would do immigration law.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I first moved here, I would specifically only practice in immigration, and then I kind of ventured into the family, criminal defense, federal practice. And then after the Trump administration, I just let go of my immigration court, my immigration caseload. So it was too much anxiety.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that ever since. I've been here in this community ever since. Haven't looked back. I love it here.
Yeah.
As far as why I decided to run for justice of the peace, I think it's always been in the back of my mind, something that I wanted to do, grow in my legal practice and in my profession, and something in the judicial branch. But I feel like it's something that you need to gain experience on. And although my colleagues would argue that I am overqualified and I should be running for county court at law or district court, I wanted to gain more experience in the judicial branch and see what the future holds. I mean, I can't, I'm not saying that for sure I'll run for district judge in the future or county court at law. I know that right now, for me, this is the right time to expand, to grow, to continue to serve my community. And I think this was the perfect opportunity when Jonathan Gracia decided to not seek reelection.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I didn't realize he had not chosen to seek reelection. Yeah,
No
so you're
particular
running for his
plan for
position.
yeah, correct.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, one of the things that I know, and I've interviewed another candidate that's also running for Justice of the Peace, but for another precinct. And one of the things that, as we talked about earlier today, was the fact that, beyond marriages and certifying people dead, so to speak, a lot of people don't know what a Justice of the Peace actually does. So could you give us some insight into that?
Yes, it's crazy how many individuals really, I guess if you really don't have any legal matters, you really don't know what's going on or really care to think about what happens because it doesn't involve you.
Mm-hmm.
So until it does, right? Then it's
Right.
something that becomes important. So the Justice of the Peace Court is actually a judicial court. You go and have judicial hearings, you go and hear lawsuits. So it is one of the lower courts. You have the Justice of the Peace Court, which, and they have the county court at laws. You have the district courts. You have federal courts. You have immigration courts, appellate courts, and so on and so forth, all the way to the Supreme Court. So it is one of the smaller courts. It's like you mentioned, you call it like a small claims court. So if you and your neighbor, get in a dispute over the fence that broke on the property line, and it's going to cost eight $800 or up to, let's just say $8,000 to fix it. You can go and file that lawsuit in the Justice of the Peace Court to decide who was responsible for fixing, for example, that fence. So in the issue with the Justice of the Peace Court is that you do not have to be an attorney to run for that position. So if you wanted to run for county court at law or district court, you have to be a licensed attorney. You do not have to be one to run for Justice of the Peace.
Mm-hmm.
So although they do listen to legal cases. So aside from any case that the lawsuit is $20,000 or less, it can be filed in that court. If you have a lawsuit over $20,000, it cannot be filed in that court.
Mm.
So those are just any type of lawsuits. They also hear any criminal cases that are Class C misdemeanors that don't require any jail time, just a fine. They can be heard in that court. For example, traffic tickets can be heard in that court. Any landlord and tenant issues, this court has exclusive jurisdiction, meaning all landlord tenant issues go to a Justice of the Peace Court. So if you have a dispute, if you're renting from somebody or you are the one that's renting to somebody, they don't want to pay their rent, or something broke and the landlord doesn't want to fix it, and so you have those issues that come about, you want to file suit, it goes into the Justice of the Peace Court. So then you have the property code that determines and kind of determines what laws need to be followed, what you need to do if you want to evict somebody, what you want to do if you don't want to pay your rent because your landlord's not doing something. All of that is heard in a Justice of the Peace Court. Another thing that they hear is truancy cases. Those are a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the kids that don't want to go to school. Well, yes, you have truancy cases. So truancy cases you have that is followed in the education code that determines when your kids need to go to school, if they're absent X amount of days, what the school needs to do. But after that, you also have the Texas Family Code that comes into play that determines how the court proceedings are held and what they need to prove in order to get a conviction regarding that case of truancy, which will stay on your record if it's a criminal case, unless you get it dismissed or you get it deferred. So it's legal proceedings that are happening in the Justice of the Peace Court. So another reason I decided to run, I think it's very important because the jurisdictional limits continue to grow in this court. The responsibilities are growing in this court. Why? Because our community is growing. Mm-hmm. Back then, when this court was established in the 1800s, it's because the communities in Texas were small. You had little municipalities, little townships. They needed someone to be able to address these legal issues for those in the town. And you didn't have a judge or a lawyer in every town. So they would appoint a Justice of the Peace. And it's in the Constitution, Texas Constitution, which is why it's so hard to get it amended and make it a requirement that now you have to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. But the responsibilities grow. So I just felt that it was very important as a practicing lawyer that has practiced in the Justice of the Peace Court to have someone with some legal experience to hear those cases.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting because, I know one or two that, I don't know if they're still just JPs or not, but they did not, as far as I know, they didn't have a law degree of any sort. And I guess my question is, how do they decide things, or how do they refer to past cases to determine? I mean, it would be kind of tough,
Yeah. So a lawyer goes to law school for 3 years and then takes a bar exam, a 3-day exam. And then every year we have continuing legal education that we have to attend. So most Justice of the Peace out there are not lawyers. If you look at most Justice of the Peace in Texas, they are not lawyers. I imagine some lawyers do not want this job. They're like, what are you doing? Because it takes away from our practice. I can be a practicing lawyer and still be Justice of the Peace.
Right.
But of course, you would have to scale down your practice to give the court the justice that it needs, the time that it needs to really go through these cases and dispose of them.
Right.
So, a lot of people are like, you are taking a pay cut, but it's not about that. It's about serving the community and having someone with experience do a good service to the people by making sure that they're being heard and the correct law is being applied. So you're right. I mean, it is a convoluted experience. You have the Texas code, the Texas family code, you have the property code, you have truancy laws. And apart from what we call statutory law, which is the books, you also have case law,
Yeah.
cases that have gone before the court and judges have ruled. You hear about it with the Supreme Court. So the judges rule on, okay, you say that this is how you determine or you read that law. They're saying that that law is read in another way. I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
should have found my phone. My kiddos are like, Mom, you already took too long. You have some laws that are determined by cases
Mm-hmm.
that the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court has issued, and so you have two different types of things. And I was reading some code the other day on a case that I'm arguing in court, and I'm looking at, I'm like, man, this legalese really is. Why do they write laws this way? Why can't they just make them like plain and simple so everybody can understand it? Because then we have to read it and then explain it to our clients in ways that I wish someone can explain it to me every day, right? You don't need
Yeah.
to use all these big words, but unfortunately, you have to know. And let me show you. I have it right here because I was thinking that exact same thing the other day because all the justice of the peace has to do once they're elected is take an 80-hour course to prepare them to be a justice of the peace. And some of the things, let me give you an example. Texas Family Code, Chapter 25 is truancy court proceeding. Section 65.003, truant conduct. A child engages in truant conduct and the child is required to attend school under Section 25.085 of the Education Code. So now you go to another code. And fails to attend school on 10 or more days or parts of days within a 6-month period in the same school year. Truant conduct may be prosecuted only as a civil case in a truancy court. It is an affirmative defense. Well, what's an affirmative defense? To an allegation of truant conduct that one or more of the absences required to be proven. And then it goes 1, 2, and 3. And then it goes to Section D, Section E, Section F, and on and on
Oh
and on.
gosh.
So, it's a legal court.
Yeah.
And you need to understand if someone's coming with a legal issue, that attorney that is trying to prosecute whoever or demand, and the other poor guy doesn't have an attorney because it's known as the people's court, that they're not taken advantage of. Not that I want to be their lawyer. I
Right.
know the difference between being a lawyer and being a judge, but I also know that I want that person to know that I know the law and the procedure and that you better follow it so that it is fair for
Yeah.
all parties.
So should a let's say you've got two parties that come to your court, should both parties have attorneys present? Is it something that they should do as a smart thing? I've always told never show up to court without a lawyer, but I don't know if
You
that's
know,
true.
I would never show up to court without a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer. But the truth is, we live in Brownsville, Texas. We live in Cameron County, Texas. And majority of the people cannot afford an attorney.
Yeah.
So that is why the Justice of the Peace Court is renownedly known as the People's Court. Because most people do go in there unrepresented by counsel. But some of those do. A lot of those credit card disputes,
Uh-huh.
those companies send counsel.
Yeah.
So then you have the, poor guy or gal who couldn't afford it and have to go over there and defend themselves. And I want to make sure that those credit card companies know that when they come before me, they're coming before somebody that knows procedure, and you better cross all your T's and dot all your I's if you want to get a verdict in your favor. Not just
Right.
because the other person's unrepresented, are you going to take advantage?
Right.
So it is important. I always think you should have counsel, but not everyone can afford it.
So how did they when it comes to truancy, the last 2 years have been tough for everybody, with COVID and all. And the majority of our kids, I mean, they attended school virtually. But there's been all kinds of stories about whether kids were really actually attending school virtually, or whether they were falling asleep or whatever. I mean, was there a little bit of a the last 2 years when it came to truancy? But I guess, what is the definition of truancy? Is it just not showing up to school, or?
No, for example, the code says that if you don't show up to school, like within, you have 10 unexcused absences in a 6 month period or more,
Uh-huh.
or I think it's six absences or four absences in 6 absences in a 4 week period.
Okay.
So it has a definition of how, and there have to be unexcused. So that's what it was saying about some affirmative defenses. What's an affirmative defense? Well, if you have a doctor's excuse, or it gives you a list of what doesn't count as an unexcused absence.
Yeah.
And I think that these last couple of years, because of COVID, not only with the truancy laws, but also with the property laws, they have, there's been some lax, and been some orders issued where say, hey, okay, we know that this is a law, but we're issuing an order where we're going to not do this for a set period of time till we know where we are. So there was a lot of lax in enforcing these orders. I mean, there was not even any courts for a while until we started doing them by Zoom.
Right.
So, it was an adjustment period, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, because I know that COVID, I mean, there was people that had lost their jobs, obviously, and they couldn't pay their rent, or their mortgage or whatever. Of course, there's, when it comes to mortgages, they've got certain things they can do, forbearance and things like that. But people who rent, were kind of in a pickle, because they didn't have the money. I mean, I used to see the lines here. I live right off Paredes, and I kid you not. I mean, you had these lines at the event center for people, waiting for food, a box of food. It was incredible,
It,
you know.
it was really an awakening experience, I think, for our country to really know that we are not um, different from anybody else. Like, we are not any more special than anybody else. Can be hit by something like this. And I think that sometimes we are so privileged living in this wonderful country with everything that we have, our freedoms and technology. And, I just think that sometimes we forget that things like this have happened, and now we know that they could happen to us as well. It was
Yeah.
a rude awakening, and I know that we lost so much. I mean, okay, I silenced my phone, but now my computer's still going. And that's why I stayed at the office, because I said, if I go home, my kids are not going to let me get through this podcast.
Yeah.
And I couldn't escape them either way.
That's not a problem. As I mean, as a lawyer, I know you're an advocate. And what are some of the things that you've advocated from a non-judicial standpoint in the past that you feel that you feel proud of that you did in the past? Is there anything particular you want to?
Non-judicial, I would say the most recent thing, advocating always, but non-judicial, a couple of things. Like I said, I practiced immigration law for a while. So when I decided to kind of move away from the actual practice of immigration law, I felt it was still very important to educate the community. The same way that we don't know a lot about the Justice of the Peace Court, I really wanted to educate the community, especially the children, with all these issues of the deferred action. Undocumented
Right.
children that were brought in illegally have been raised here. They're about to graduate high school. Some of them did not even know that they were undocumented. And now they're graduating thinking they're going to get to go to college, and they weren't. And
Yeah.
so it was very important for me to volunteer my time and go to the schools and give presentations to the parents and the students about what deferred action was, about what their rights were, about them being able to go to school. I mean, they can't leave. For example, we are blessed that we have UTB here, they have Edinburgh here. They didn't have to leave the the jurisdictional limits to cross the checkpoint to get a higher education. But of course, they won't qualify for federal financial aid, but there was state aid that they could have qualified for. So I really advocated and educating those children to hopefully be able to reach a higher education for themselves, being a lot of them first generation Mexican Americans like I am. My both parents are from Mexico. So being that first and setting that standard for your children, the next generation to come, is really, really important. So I love doing that. Um, I also, a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, my children were attending BISD, and it was surprising to me. And I know it's not a big deal for a lot of people, but a lot of these elementary gyms at the ISD did not have, were not equipped with air conditioning. And I know
Yeah.
some people think that that's petty, and we didn't grow up with air conditioning. But you know what? When I was in elementary school here, we didn't have gyms. We had PE outside, and maybe we had
Exactly.
like those ports, like those carports or something really
Right.
big. But there, you had at least some air, or
Yeah.
flowing when you were out there playing. And I'm sorry, but I don't ever remember as a child like our heat levels getting down to like 108 degrees. Like
No.
I just don't recall it. So now we have these gyms with fans, and like there were like little saunas. I mean, these poor kids were all my kids. I'm just so I really pushed to. I go to the BISD meetings. I talk to the board members, the principal. We teamed up with them and really pushed to get those AC units installed in those schools. And we're actually moving forward. I mean, they were getting the grants, they were getting everything moving forward, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So after that, my daughter was going into sixth grade, and I wasn't ready for her to go to junior high. So I put them at Episcopal Day School so they could still be together. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened with that. I'm like, I feel like I need to follow up and follow through with what I started.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
those are just
I I
things.
remember, yeah, you're right. I mean, when we were in, well, when I was in elementary school, we didn't even have any kind of carport. It was basically a asphalt blacktop. God help you, and so air conditioning. And I remember a time when there was no air conditioning. I think I went all the way through sixth grade where we didn't have air conditioning in a lot of the schools. It
Yes.
wasn't
And
until
I know
like
some
seventh
people looked
grade.
at me like really, I mean, like they probably to them it wasn't an issue. But when I would see, I would talk to the principal and they would have kids like really having like heat strokes.
Yeah.
And I know I picked up and my children were like just from sitting there. And I was like, yeah, that's not healthy. That we need to change that.
Yeah.
So if not AC units, something to ventilate the air in there. So that was something important to me. So I don't know. My dad always says you were meant to be an attorney because you never know how to be quiet.
Yeah.
And then he said, you are not a politician because you don't know how to be quiet. Because I've always been an advocate. I've
Yeah.
always felt like I needed to speak up, stand up, and do what's right. And despite whose feelings I may hurt, if it's the truth and it needs to be said, then it needed to be said.
Yeah.
So that's really still the way I am. And I think maybe that's what makes me a good attorney and advocate for children, because
Yeah.
I really want to talk for them and through them and make sure things are fair and just.
Yeah. Well, I remember I did a stint for about 2 years ago. I went to work for a government contractor, and you mentioned immigration, and sure enough, they dealt with kids that came across, sheltering kids, and I actually had to deal with an organization. I think you're maybe Probar was the name of the
Yeah,
organization,
yeah,
and I mean there was all kinds of things we had to set up, especially as soon as COVID hits. Because those sessions needed to be individual on an individual case basis. So, but I was very surprised at how that whole process went about, and just the influx of the kids coming. I mean, I saw toddlers. I mean, toddlers
yeah,
without parents.
yeah. Really sad situation.
It really is a sad situation, and they don't have anybody. They don't have anybody, and so it was kind of refreshing to see that there was a legal organization out there that was looking out for these kids.
Yeah,
And our the company mission was basically to reshelter them with their parents or their relatives somewhere in the U.S. So
yeah. And
it was an eye opening experience for me.
yeah, I represented many of those children in other aspects of family law. And so I've been to almost all of those detention centers, and it's an eye opener.
Yeah.
I mean, we, as being an advocate for children, whether it's in child protection court, in family court, or in this case, in those issues with the children of the detention centers, it's a humbling experience, and
Yeah.
it really, you it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to really set it apart and then go home to your children for the day and not feel that impact. I mean, it takes a lot out of an individual to go through that.
Oh
But I
yeah.
think it also helps, and I think that's something that I can use as the justice of the peace, because it's not something that I've been told about. It's something that I have experienced. And I think
Exactly.
that experiences that I have as an attorney for 14 years will help me make the right decisions and the justice of the peace when it comes to our children.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that concept of vouchers for homeschoolers to buy supplies. Not even homeschoolers. I mean, I think as a former educator and as a mother of two children and schools, and being in this and our county where we are in one of the poorest cities, I mean, I know that a couple of years ago, I would always, when my kids were at Sharp Elementary, I donated a lot of uniforms to children because it is what it is. There are some families that just cannot afford it.
Yeah.
And school supplies, I would do the bunch of school supplies for the teachers. I go to Walmart. Every year I go to Walmart and they ask me, "Are you a teacher?" Because I'm buying in bulk, and I'm like, "No, but I used to be, and I know what it's like." So these are donated to teachers,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really good question, because I think that as justice of the peace, we can work with city officials, with county officials. We can raise funds. We can, like those Class C misdemeanors cases I was talking about, that we're going to issue a fine or community service. That's something that I would like to get in touch to see if it's a program that we can develop. Like, I know in county court at law, when you get probation involved in some of these criminal defense cases and they have fines or they have to make a donation to a nonprofit organization, that's something that I'm thinking that we can establish so that those funds are filtered back to the school, since we're hearing truancy cases.
Right.
So I think that's something interesting, and including homeschoolers, which now we have, I think, more of them, because a lot of people still not sure about sending their children back to school and they're homeschooling.
Right.
So I think that's a very good a good question, and I think that is something that I would love to explore as a justice of the peace. What programs or can we develop or funnel those monies into a nonprofit or one of these nonprofits to help some individuals like this with school supplies.
Yeah, because I've even heard, and I mean, I don't know for sure, right? But I've heard where teachers today are actually putting their own money into buying
I
school
When I was a
supplies.
teacher, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really hard. And a lot of time, I mean, you get these school supplies lists and a lot of parents are not going to get everything on that list, but these kids need them. So teachers go and they have reserved, right, in case those children that come without, they're not going to single them out that they didn't have it, but they pay it with their own money. You have a lot of teachers on like Amazon having like a little page to say, "Hey, donate to my classroom." And
Right.
that's something that they shouldn't have to do, but
Yeah.
because they're good teachers, they do it.
Yeah. And you said you had a little bit of experience in the textbook area. Um, it's been a while, and my daughter's already almost graduating. Well, she's graduating from high school this year. But for a while, I didn't see a whole lot of textbooks being issued out. Is that still happening, or have they
You
gone
know,
away?
when I was still in junior, so I'm 44 years old. I graduated from Rivera High School in 1996.
Yeah.
So when I was still in school, we still had lockers and books.
Yeah, I remember.
So I have a 12-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. They are not, they are issued books that are in the classroom. Like, they don't go anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
they're there. And when they do take something home, it's in like their Chromebook now.
Yeah.
And they go on their Chromebook and do stuff there. Like, it's a whole new technological world that I am not equipped for.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I wish that that would have been the case when we went to college, because I spent a hell
All those
of a
books.
lot of money on textbooks. Uh,
Law school. A lot of people say their law schools. Their law school books. I was like, as soon as I was done, I couldn't wait to get rid of those things.
well, in my case, I have a technical degree, and of course, I can't keep any of those books because the technology changes every time you blink an eye, right? But I still
Yeah,
have like two or three boxes in my garage of technical books that my wife's been wanting me to get rid of for years. But believe it or not, just like you guys that are lawyers, you may have to go pull up a book about something. Uh, I once or twice have had to go and blow the dust off the book and find something that uniquely somebody's run into. You know, they've got a problem and the technology is so new now that they can't remember some of the old basic stuff and you got to go all the way back there. So but
Yeah.
definitely books and supplies. I mean, that's something that, you know, especially supplies. I mean, I remember um, when I used to work for Maquiladora, one of my managers had a book supply, an annual book supply that he did, where he raised money for books and I'm for excuse me, for supplies. And then we expanded that further, where we actually had an essay contest, where we actually bought and donated MacBooks and stuff like that. And it was based on kids writing an essay about whatever topic it was. So for about a week, all we did is we were reading all these essays that these kids wrote. It was like an exercise in itself, but they got an opportunity to compete and they got themselves a brand new Mac along the way. You know, I mean,
I love that. I love, I mean, those kids have an inspiration to do something and be able to give them something like that, which probably many of them could never dream to have.
yeah,
And so, you know, I think we do that a lot in a lot of the organizations that I'm with, either with the women's law section. We also do that with essays, Brownsville Junior Services. I know that we do scholarships as well. And, you know, reading those inspirational words from children that I remember being there.
yeah,
And so I think it's so important. You know, having someone with experience, I think is important, but also having someone that these children can relate to is
yeah,
also important. Because you know, as well as I do, when you are serving as a public servant, you are called to be a public servant, not
right,
only in the job that you're doing, but at the schools, in your community. So to be able to be, I was born in Houston, but like I said, I mean, I moved here when I was in second grade. Second grade, I think I said third grade before I went to Sundown Elementary, second grade, and then I moved to Bruns Elementary in third, and then finished up at Gonzalez Elementary.
oh wow,
Um, so, you know, being able to relate to them and know, like, I grew up just where you were. You know, I know what poverty is. I know what it's like to be hungry, or you know, and want something else, but you know, all we get are your tortilla de harina with beans, and but hey, you're not abused, and you're not neglected if you're lucky. I know there's a lot of kids that are being abused and
right,
neglected, unfortunately. But being just poor, please, that's a blessing. If you're loved and taken care of, you can overcome that.
yeah,
So being able to stand in front of them as a strong Latina who is a lawyer, who grew up just where you came from, who is the first, you know, family member in my family to graduate from the university and get a postgraduate degree, you can do it.
yeah,
And so there's nothing better that I would love to do than serve as hopefully a role model for all these little brown faces that are going to be looking up at me. So
yeah,
I can't, that's just the other part of serving as Justice of the Peace. That's just the cherry on top, the
yeah,
community, really being out there in the community.
yeah,
Because the job is a job, right?
right,
You're going to go in there in the court, you're going to run your court, you're going to set your docket, you're going to be efficient, and you're going to run your docket what you need to do.
yeah,
But being outside of the community and serving the community is just a bigger, it's just bigger than that. So I can't wait to do that, hopefully.
yeah. Well,
I'm already up for
that's what I tell my fellow podcasters. You know, we it takes a lot to get in front of the mic, you know, on a weekly basis. And I told my fellow podcasters, some of you guys have to behave. You know, we serve as role models too. You know, we're providing a vehicle of information. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the likelihood of people watching the 6 o'clock news these days is
Yep.
that's a thing of the past. I mean, everybody's on their phone. So
Yeah.
when I started this podcast, actually, I had planned to do this podcast, this political podcast, back in October of last year. But for whatever reason, I decided to launch another podcast, which I have, which is Brownsville Tech Live, and that show specifically is deals with technology and stuff like that. So I launched that one first. But then something through December said, it's time to, switch gears a little bit and let's get the candidates out here. They don't have enough time given to them on a 6 o'clock segment. You're lucky to get a minute, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't know who their elected officials are.
No, and it's really interesting. A friend of mine is running for mayor in Harlingen, and they're having a debate tonight, mayoral debate tonight.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking, what happened to those? I mean, that I really love those because that's when you can get in front together with your platforms to the community, answer the question. You
right.
get two sides of the answer, and you really get a perspective of both individuals because I can come in today and sound great and do this, and the format of the questions are going to be different because we're just, we're chatting. So if my opponent comes on and they're chatting, the format's going to flow as well because you're just talking. But when you have set questions and answers and I mean, I think then your strength and you really get to shine. And I think that individuals can make a better decision as to who they're going to support because you're right. A lot of people do not know, sadly, who their elected officials are. And those that are running
Yeah,
don't know Adam from, Joe. They
yeah,
just don't. And so I think it's really important. And there's only so much we can do. I mean, block walking, we get out there, but there's only enough hours in the day.
yeah,
So, it's really difficult to reach everybody on a large spectrum to really get your voice heard and let them know who you are and why this position is so important. It's just not about being a people person. We can all be people, right? We can
yeah,
all be polite and courteous and give to our community. And I mean, I know I have, I'm sure you have, you just mentioned a way that you do it. And so a lot of us do that. A lot of us give back to our community. But aside from that, this is a real position that's going to make real legal decisions.
right.
And so, to you, is it important to have somebody that has the legal experience who actually have practiced and made those arguments and knows where to find the law or not?
Yeah,
And surprisingly, a lot of people don't care.
yeah,
And that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your voice, your vote, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I respect that. So if experience is important to you, then research your candidates and you're going to see that I'm the only one with legal experience.
yeah,
But if community service is important, I think both of us have done a lot of community service.
yeah,
But to some people, it's not going to matter. And
yeah,
if it doesn't, well, then I respect that.
yeah,
That's the democratic process. And I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah,
And I
and
love
you're
it.
right. I mean, I think I've heard once or twice that somebody went into a JP court. I can't remember if it was for a credit card thing or whatever. And I had heard who they were going to go see or be in front of. And I mean, I knew they didn't have a law degree. I knew that. And I'm thinking, well, how on earth are they really going to decide that? And unfortunately, they didn't. They lost to the credit card company. They did. So, but I think you're right. I mean, it is important to have someone who's got the experience, in law, and has actually been an advocate. I think that's an important thing. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember the old Mastercard commercials a few years back where the guy was flying and the pilot, something happened to the pilot on the airplane, and they pull some guy from the back, and the guy says, "Are you a pilot?" "No, but I stayed at a no. It was a Holiday Inn kind of thing." It was so funny, but you got to have a little bit of
He's like, yeah,
experience.
no, but I did at the Holiday Inn.
That's right. So yeah, definitely. It definitely helps to know that the person that you're going in front of is going
Yeah.
to give you a fair shake and knows the law. You know.
Yes, and I love these type of shows because this is trying to reach those individuals who have not made a decision.
Right.
Because if you already committed and that is your friend, I am your friend, I am your family. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. You're
Yeah.
gonna vote for me because I'm your friend and you're my family member. We support each other.
Yeah.
We're true friends, right, and family.
Yeah.
So those are not. I'm not trying to sway any individuals that have already made up their minds. I think this is a great platform to reach those individuals who have no clue who
Right.
either candidate are. They just see our faces on a bunch of posters,
Right.
and then all they see is a name and a face.
Yeah.
So I want them to know where I come from, what I do, what I have done for our community, and that I am committed to this position. I know that during the last round, before the initial primary, since there were three of us, I mean, they were really attacking hard on the fact that how can I be a full-time justice of the peace when I have my practice?
Yeah.
And I addressed that on my Facebook. Someone actually messaged me. They're like, "Are you going to close down your practice?" And I was like, "No, it's not feasible."
Yeah.
I'm going to be very honest with you. I have no idea what the salary is for a justice of the peace.
Yeah.
That was nothing I looked up when I
Yeah.
decided to run.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter to me. It
Right.
wasn't about that.
Yeah.
It was about having someone with experience, someone that wants to serve their community, and I think that I was the most qualified for that position. I think it was the perfect time for me. And I believe in term limits. So
Yeah.
if I'm elected, this is not a lifetime position for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 2 terms and I'm done.
Yeah.
So I just feel that that's really important, and I wanted to do this, and I know that I'm qualified and able to do it.
Yeah.
What they pays, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I was at a meeting. I was like, I don't know, because they asked me, and I said, I'm gonna, and I still haven't looked it up.
Yeah.
And I know that they were criticizing because they're like, she cannot be a full time judge.
Yeah.
And I was like, understand this. If you go file a lawsuit, do you see the judge when you file the lawsuit?
Yeah.
No, you see
No.
the clerk at the front who takes your lawsuit, has to file it, give you the paperwork that you need to go or give to whoever they're going to go give notice to the person you're suing. Then they have time to file an answer or response with the court. And then once that is met, then we set it for a hearing or on our docket.
Yeah.
And those are the days that you hear these cases.
Yeah.
You're not there 24/7.
Yeah.
Is that true? You're not there 24/7 at the JP court. Although the justice of the peace position is not 8 to 5.
Right.
And I took that into consideration because I am a single parent of 2 little girls.
Yeah.
And I took that into consideration because sometimes we get called, as you mentioned, at
Right.
all hours of the night. It's not 8 to
Exactly.
5. You
Right.
know, I spoke to my friend who held this position before as a justice of the peace. I spoke to other lawyers that are colleagues of mine who hold the position of justice of the peace, and I really did my research before I decided to run because I knew that if I did this, I was going to be committed, and if I couldn't commit, then I was not going to put my name on the ballot.
Yeah.
And so I really had to talk to my family members and say, look, I may got called out at 2, 3 in the morning. And my brother lives a mile away. I said, so most likely it's going to be you.
Yeah. Well,
But
tell
they
us.
support me 100%. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the location of where the court is. I mean, I know there's place 1, 2, and 3. Is this going to be
They're
here in
all in the same
Brownsville?
place.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
they're all in the same place. Yeah.
Okay.
They used to be right here on on Harrison,
Mm-hmm.
where our current courts are. They used to be there on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they took over that building off of, I think it's Elizabeth Street, where behind the Wells Fargo building,
Oh, okay.
where now you go and do your property, the property taxes.
Yep. And the
That's
registration.
that's where all three of them are located now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because I've been down at the courthouse on Harrison, and oh my God, it's like packed. I've been there for jury duty. I've been there as a participant in a lawsuit, and oh my gosh, it's
I
just
love
packed.
it and I miss it.
Yeah. Well, tell us. So basically, let's talk a little bit about traffic. You mentioned something about traffic tickets. What type of traffic tickets do y'all
Class,
look at?
anything which is a class C,
Okay.
any offense that is a class C misdemeanor. So as misdemeanors, you have class A, class B, class C.
Right.
Class A and class B can be punishable with jail time. So a justice of the peace cannot hear those.
Okay.
A class C is only punishable by fine.
Okay.
Those a justice of the peace can hear.
So
Okay. So
with
any
regards,
class
okay,
any class C misdemeanor, not only traffic tickets. If you have an assault class C, a justice of the peace can hear that case.
okay. So with regards to the actual law enforcement agency that issues out the traffic violation, is do y'all handle certain types? I mean, not the local police department, right? Or can you?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
The Cameron, the
okay,
sheriff,
okay,
they will, because remember, the Brownsville PD is going to go file in their municipal court,
correct.
and they get to file any of three of the justice of the peace courts. So, like lawsuits that are filed in district court or
Uh-huh.
county court at law, you file the lawsuit at the district clerk or county court window, and then it randomly gets assigned to a judge. You don't get to pick your judge.
Hmm.
In justice of the peace court, you get to pick your judge. I want to go file a lawsuit. I get to choose which justice of the peace in my jurisdiction I want to file that lawsuit in.
Ah, okay.
Same thing with those officers that are issuing the tickets. They get to pick which window they're going to go file it in.
Okay, so you can hear local police department, or you can handle local police department traffic violations then.
On the county sheriff, yeah.
Okay,
Because
all right,
remember, county the justice of the peace covers the county.
okay, and but no DPS tickets, right? Or yes. And
DPS,
the reason I'm asking is because I've seen DPS go into Cameron Park a few times, and I'm always thinking that's out of your jurisdiction, but maybe not.
no,
You know?
no DPS. Remember, they're Texas.
Okay,
So Texas DPS can go anywhere in
okay,
Texas. Rangers, Bronzeville PD can only reach. So there are certain, even though you're in Bronzeville, you're out of Brownsville jurisdiction. It turns into county.
okay,
So then you have the sheriff's department that needs to be called. But if it's within the Brownsville city limits, then it's a city. So correct. I may be, I may have misspoken because I think that I remember handling a classy misdemeanor case where it was a DPS and it was we did class C it in JP Court and also Brownsville PD. So I think because it's countywide, they all of them can file in that courtroom if it's
okay,
class C, no jail time.
okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I haven't gotten a ticket in
And
a while. I haven't gotten a ticket in a while. Knock on wood.
I
But
know me either. I don't do a lot of traffic violations. I know that when the JPs were over here and we would bust down class A, class B to class C, it was convenient to have them in the same courthouse. Now they have to come all the way over here. But yeah, I mean, you have to refresh your memory on things that you're doing, especially when you don't practice in them a lot and you're like, wait a minute,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, class C misdemeanors that don't require jail time.
All right.
Another thing that I'm able to do because I am an attorney is that I can sign warrants. So
Ah.
for blood draws.
Yeah.
So if you have DW cases, they don't want to do the field sobriety test, and the officer wants a blood draw. They can go to any magistrate, any judge to get a warrant. But they can also come to the justice of the peace if the justice of the peace is a licensed attorney.
And is
So
that blood draw warrant instantaneous at the moment that they get stopped? Is that what it is?
well, they have to, if they're stopping them, they have suspicion that they're intoxicated, they don't want
Uh,
to do the field sobriety test, they can hold them while they go get the warrant.
ah.
So let's say it's a midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning stop, they can't get a judge or, whatever judge they find, or if they decide they don't want to bother the district judge, they want to go to the JP, hey Liz, I have a warrant I need you to sign, come to the house, I'll sign it right now. Then that one officer transports them to the hospital while the other one comes get the warrant signed, takes it over there to do the blood draw.
Wow. That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting the way that works. All right. Well, it looks like we've gone a full hour, believe it or not.
That's
Uh,
it?
believe it or not, yeah, a full hour. You can come back anytime you want to, by the way.
Wow,
Uh,
that went by really fast.
yeah, I know. Is there anything you want to kind of leave with the audience, with the voters or the potential voters out there that
I
we
just
haven't
ask
spoken
all
about?
of you, no, I really just want to ask all of you to please get informed, to please, if you have any questions, research me, call me. I am an open book. I think that the election process is really, really important. If experience matters to you, please call me, get informed. I'm ready to answer any of your questions, but more importantly, go vote.
Yeah.
take someone to go vote with you. I think the numbers are so low. And as Democrats, if you are a Democrat, it's very important because Republicans are growing in our, I'm a Democrat. So
Yeah.
that's why I say that. So it's so important. It's so important. I really urge all our community to just go vote.
Yeah.
Take a friend, take advantage of early voting. I ask for your support, but at the end of the day, all I really want is our community to get out there and make a difference and make
Yeah.
your voice heard.
Now,
I
when's
appreciate
the runoff election now?
May 16th to May 20 is early voting.
Okay.
May 24th is election day.
Okay. All right.
Around the corner.
Yeah. Now, will the winner of the runoff have a Republican opponent or not?
Not in our race, not in the 2-2.
Okay.
So this is it.
All right. So will you or your opponent, whoever wins, will they be installed immediately, or will they have to wait till the end of the year to get installed?
We'll wait. Jonathan will finish his term.
Okay. All
And
right.
so when the term finishes, we should be getting sworn in on, I should be getting sworn in, I'm just kidding, on January 1st. Hey,
All
I
right.
believe in affirmations. I'm putting it out into the universe.
Well, definitely, we wish you the best of luck, and you're always welcome to come on the show. I promised it wasn't going to be bad. I hope I've been gracious with you. You know.
No, you've been fine. I just didn't know if it was going to be, if we had questions. Because, I mean, I went with Erasmo Castro just to have coffee, and he put me on
Yeah.
his show out of the
Well, you know he's my cousin, right?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
No,
cousins.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So
The podcast is a
I've
family
known,
business.
I've known some of his family members. Well, I went to school with Gabby at Oliveira, and I know
Yeah,
Elisa for
Gabby.
a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So that he's like, come have coffee, and then he put me on the show out of him, and I love it. I don't mind talking to the community. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been doing it my whole life, but as far as being put through the ringer, I mean, I've been through it. I've done trials with individuals that just do not like me,
Yeah.
and trust me, there's nothing that has not already been said to me that I can't handle.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I invited you because I actually saw you on his show a few days ago,
Oh, okay.
and I was trying to go through my list of people who I had invited, those that I had already had on the show, and you came up and I said, I missed her, you know. So I said, nope, let me send out the invitation. You know. So
No, yes.
anytime, like I said, I wish you the best of luck, and anytime you want to come on for anything, just give me a holler. But
Thank you so much. I appreciate the open invitation. I might take you up on that.
no
I
problem.
do appreciate you having me, and it was fun. I can't believe the hour went by so fast.
I know. I mean, I could talk forever, but I know we both
I
got
probably
kids to
can
deal with.
too.
You know.
People are probably like, yeah.
Alrighty. Okay.
Have
Well,
a good-
everybody, as you heard, the runoff election is in May. Elizabeth Garza is running for Justice of the Peace for Precinct 2, Place 2. There's early voting and also an election coming up. So get out there and vote. So
Yeah.
thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.